Yeah, welcome in. Welcome back to another episode of the Format Podcast. Got a pretty interesting show for you here today. Going to have former University of North Florida women's head basketball coach Derek Gibbs on, and we're going to talk some women's college basketball. This is something I don't talk about a whole lot, but this season has been crazy and it's been really interesting to me, and I definitely wanted to get the opinion and get the thoughts of somebody who's been boots on ground with that, and he's a guy I admire a great deal. So we're going to do that. But before we do, you know what time it is. If you're here on YouTube and you haven't already, please go ahead, click that subscribe, that like, that notification bell. Make sure you're kept up to date whenever we drop new content on the channel. If you want the audio-only version of the podcast, open up your audio podcast platform, hit the search bar, type in the Format Podcast. We should come right up. And make sure you're doing that. Make sure you're sharing the podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, make sure you're also giving us that like, that 5-star review, and drop a comment. All that stuff helps us rise in the algorithm, helps us find more sports fans, helps more sports fans find us. And make sure you're aware. Make sure you put it on your phone. Make sure you put it on your calendar. Make sure you remember tomorrow night, 7 p.m., Saturday night, we got the live show and we're going to talk some sports. My man G's going to come back to join me, so can't wait to do that. And, of course, we're going to open up the phone line so that you guys can call in and interact with me directly. All right, let's get right to it. Coach, what's going on, man? Good to see you.
Yeah, you too, man. Appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely, man. Coach, if I didn't tell you, like I said in the intro, you're definitely a guy I really admire. I really enjoyed my time at the University of North Florida covering you and covering your team. And it was a really good experience for me. Just be there and kind of, obviously, the women's game has been around for a long time, but for me to be able to kind of cover that up close, that was real cool. So before we go on to kind of what's happening today, give me your thoughts. And this is one that I really wanted to ask you about. Obviously, you were the coach at UNF for a while, and you coached Jazz Bond, who was the first Lady Osprey to ever get drafted into the WNBA. Tell me what that was like coaching her, and tell me, how it made you feel as her coach to see her, make that huge step for the program, for the school, and obviously for herself.
It was extremely exciting. And I think the biggest thing is watching her grow, her commitment to her growth, her commitment to UNF, the program itself, her commitment to me and my staff. When Jazz got there, and she actually expressed this when she was kind of finishing up, she didn't know if she wanted to continue playing. She kind of lost the love a little bit and was kind of trying to find herself. She transferred in and, immediately kind of hit it off, really showed her what our plan would be for her, how we would use her, and utilize her skill set. But then the biggest thing is how we're going to help her get better. And her commitment to that was amazing. The person is a testament to the person she is, and how she just committed to that. So for me, seeing that growth and maturity for her from when she got there all the way through the end of her career, and then that culminating to honestly the highest honor of just getting drafted. And the W was unbelievable. And I know it was something she was really grateful for, something she was really excited about. And me just seeing her was really a proud moment, honestly.
Absolutely. I can only imagine what that must have felt like as, being her coach for so many games and watching her. And like you said, seeing her development, seeing the work that she put in, and seeing it kind of end in that spot that all players, all hoopers want to reach. And that's, becoming a professional. So, yeah. But okay, so that was a couple of years ago, but let's move forward. There's some stuff I want to talk to you about today, Coach, man, because when I was growing up, I think you and I are probably around the same age. When I was growing up, college basketball was a huge deal. I remember ESPN Big Mondays, and I grew up in the Mid-Atlantic, so watching getting to watch the Big East games and the ACC games, and Big Mondays, you see Allen Iverson and Ray Allen going at it on one Big Monday, and Ray Allen and Kerry Kittles going at it on another, or Allen Iverson, John Wallace, and that was just the Big East. And then, of course, you got the ACC, and I remember watching Randolph Childress score over 100 points in 3 games in the ACC tournament. I think that was in 1995. I think Tim Duncan was a freshman then. And, seeing all this stuff and watching Vince Carter and Rasheed Wallace and Ed Cota and all these guys. And I know West Coast people. I'm not hating on the West Coast, but I grew up in the East, so that's more of what I saw. But the point I'm trying to make is college basketball, the men's game, used to be so incredible. But then I guess with the infusion of the one and done and the transfer portal and all that, it makes it so much harder, I guess, to to grow with a team and
Mhm.
watch it for 2 or 3 or even 4 years if you're lucky. And it kind of takes away that connection to the teams. And we've seen the popularity of the men's game fade a great deal, I think, and those are big reasons for that. And basically, up until March Madness, unfortunately, I hate to say it, it seems like no one cares about men's college basketball.
Mhm.
But over the last couple of years, this is where you come in, coach, obviously, and in the women's game. And that's not to say that the women's game hasn't always had outstanding players. Your Diana Taurasi's, your Brittany Griner's, your Maya Moore's, Brianna Stewart's, so on and so forth, Shamik Holtzclaw, all those people. Of course, going back even further, Cheryl Miller, those all-time greats who, really paved the way. But now we're seeing the women's college game at a point where it's literally more popular than the men's college game. I mean, the ratings are outdoing men's college basketball. We saw that last year in the women's Final Four. We're seeing the level of play possibly at a higher level than it's ever been. I'm never generally the guy to say that today's athletes and today's players are so much better than the players of the past. And I often wonder, like, if Cheryl Miller could play today, and I know she thinks that when she's watching, like, man, if I could play today, woo-wee, you know what I'm saying? So I totally get it, but we're seeing that the women's college game at a place where it's maybe never been before in
Mhm.
terms of popularity, in terms of being profitable monetarily. So give me some of your opening thoughts on that, on the women's college game, and why it's reaching this level and what's so great about it.
Yeah, when you were going through and talking about the men stuff and you calling out the names, it took me back. I remember
Yeah,
those days, and that's when
yeah.
I was coming up, really learning the game and watching the game on so many different levels. And
Mhm.
to this day, I still got my DVDs, and
Yeah,
actually you might find some VHSs back there
right,
of some of those games. I
right.
used to love watching Allen Iverson in Georgetown. I was a big
Mhm.
Hoya fan growing up and that type deal, so I totally can relate to how you describe things, staying up late to watch one shining moment at the end of the
That's right.
NCAA tournament. Like,
Yeah.
all that stuff was classic, and it has changed a little bit. And I think part of that is what you mentioned. Everybody still supports the teams, but I think the difference back then was there was a player
Mhm.
that was the face of a team.
That's right.
Your Iversons, your Ray Allens,
Mhm.
your Wallaces from
Mhm.
Carolina. Like there were
That's
there
right.
were players that you could totally, when you named the team, there was a player that
Yeah,
immediately
yeah,
came to
yeah.
mind, and that team
Yeah,
was playing. A player was playing, and
that's right.
you turned the TV on not just to watch Georgetown or UNC or Duke or whoever. You turned it on to watch that player.
That's
And
right.
I think that was a big part. And now, like you said, that's changed because of the one and dones, and how quickly players get in and get out of college. And I think on the women's side, it's changed for a couple reasons. One, you have now you've mentioned all the great players from the past, and I think they've kind of laid the foundation for the players that are coming through now. And nowadays, though, you got the same names, but now you have the immediate access to the information with social media and the internet platforms and that kind of stuff. So it puts it out there a little bit quicker.
Mhm.
And the other thing are the rivalries.
Mm.
I think that was it.
Right.
It started and it's slowly progressed, and then you go and you
Mhm.
culminate with the Dawn Staley impact. To be honest with you,
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
success she's had, but not just the success she's had, it's kind of her kind of taking the mantle from some of the teams that were traditionally
I
in
noticed
that
that.
same space. Your
Yeah.
UConns, your
Mhm.
Tennessees, and now it's kind of transitioned. So I think that has something to do
Mhm.
with it. You're creating new rivalries that are drawing new attention. You're creating new faces with the Bostons, the Angel Reeses, the Caitlin
Mhm.
Clarks, like new
Mhm.
faces of the game that are honestly also being plastered on the social media and on the internet. And now you see those players making plays consistently, and that impact now gets spread out a little bit quicker, or a lot quicker than what it used to. So I think there's a lot of factors that play into it. But also the players, I think they've embraced it, and they're putting themselves out there, and it's unprecedented things that they're doing, and that's an important piece of it also. So I think it's a combination of a lot of things. And I will say this: I think it's in the best place it's ever been, meaning women's
I'd
basketball.
say so.
And I honestly feel this NCAA tournament might be the most watched
Yeah.
and most anticipated tournament
Mhm.
ever, because of some of those faces, some of those rivalries, And I think that's an important piece and an exciting piece for the game.
And we're definitely going to get to that NCAA tournament, because there is one matchup in particular that I would love to see, and I'm gonna ask you about that. But before we get to that, I do think it's interesting that you mentioned like Dawn Staley kind of. I'm hesitant to say taking over, because anytime you have an all-time great, your Gino REMs and those types, you never want to say quite taking over, right? Because all it takes is one class, and they have the experience, the knowledge, they know how to win, right? But do you see UConn maybe sliding back a bit? They have not looked as dominant over the last few years, and nothing lasts forever, but they haven't looked as dominant as they previously did. And to your point, Dawn Staley in South Carolina, absolutely out here killing. I think they just lost for the first time the other day in the SEC conference tournament. Did they lose? They won.
Hey, what?
Okay, so they beat LSU. Okay, that's right, because at the end, Angel Reese said, "We're not afraid of them. We'll see him again." That's right.
Mhm.
Okay, so we'll get to that. But yeah, I mean, do you see her as being the next one? Because was Kim Mulkey have 4 championships, I think?
Yeah.
She's a beast too,
Mhm.
So do you see those two as kind of being the standard bearers going forward in the game, or you think Gino's got a little something left up his sleeve, or where are you with that?
I think the thing with UConn, I think it's an interesting thing for them is they're very talented.
Mm-hmm.
They've been hit by the injury bug the last 2 years.
That's right.
And that's been the
That's
thing.
right.
They haven't been full strength to really be able to assess how they compare to your LSUs, your UConns,
Mm-hmm.
in that realm.
Mm-hmm.
I think so. That's the thing that you really don't know. So yes, I still think they're in the mix. I still think he's really impactful on the sport and the game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think his teams are always going to be ready to compete at a high level.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting dynamic from that standpoint because of the injuries. You can't really, it's hard to compare. And I think it's been they've had probably, I want to say 5 or 6 ACL, and it's ridiculous the
Yeah,
injuries
Paige
that
Beckers
they've had.
was the main one
And
that I
obviously
remember.
Paige Becker is one of the best
Mm-hmm.
players in the country.
That's right.
Hasn't been able to stay on the floor long enough to really
Mm-hmm.
truly have her impact. So I will never count them out. But it's actually exciting to see other teams, coaches, players not only come to the forefront and be able to challenge. People were back in when UConn was dominating college
Mm-hmm.
sports.
Yeah.
Everybody would always ask the question: is it bad for women's basketball that they were
Mm-hmm.
just always at the top? And in my opinion, I don't, because we as coaches, we're all competitors. Like that's one of the reasons we do this. We love to compete,
Mm-hmm.
and that was the standard, and it just pushed everybody else to try to get to that level.
Mm-hmm.
And you got someone like someone that's been in it the whole time, like a Mulkey, who's had success across it all. You got
Mm-hmm.
somebody like a Tara Vanderveer, who's had success
Yeah.
across it all. And then
Right.
you got the young ones coming up, the younger coaches coming up that are right on their coattails, and they've seen the example that they've set and
Mm-hmm.
understand that if you want to be great and you want to win championships, you got to match that level.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got somebody like Dawn Staley most recently that's done that. And you've had some others that have done it also, but I think it's the consistency that separates them. That's what makes UConn so great, the consistency. That makes Mulkey so great, the consistency across different teams.
That's right.
Tara Vanderveer, consistency. That's been the key element. You have some ones that have been in there every once in a while. They'll make a run here, make a run there. But you got those old heads that are in there getting it done every single year.
Mm-hmm.
They've been able to adjust to the changing times and the landscape and been able to elevate the people and players around them to be able to compete at a high level.
Okay. So you were most recently at Clemson. So that says to me that I'm sure you've played against or competed, against Dawn Staley. What's she like as a person?
Unbelievable. She's the thing that you really get is she is. And I tell my kids this all the time because we talk about it, and I'll text her after a win, and they're
Mm-hmm.
like, "You got Dawn Staley's number?" And I'm
Right.
like, "Yeah, I
Right.
do." Like
I
my brother
literally
was
just
in the
thought that
phone
when
the
you
other
said
day
it.
looking through my contacts, and that's the first
Yeah.
thing she typed in because she didn't believe me.
Okay.
And but the idea of what she's done and how she's done it, but the way she's done it,
Mm-hmm.
how she supports her players, how she has galvanized that community in South Carolina, the Columbia community
Mm-hmm.
around her team. And yeah, you can say, yes, they are winning, so it's easy, but she did that before as they were coming up. And I think just her commitment to the community, her impact she's had, and how she's embraced the idea of not carrying women's basketball, but really trying to uplift women's basketball and everybody involved, from how she handled, sending, the piece of the championship net to all the African American women, female coaches in the
Mm,
profession, to again inspire and give hope. Like, she just does it a different way,
okay.
and it's appreciated so much by anybody involved. I just saw something today that there was a commentator or a radio station that was waiting on my son sitting in the car, and I was scrolling through social media, and I guess this morning there was an individual on a radio station that must have said something that was inappropriate in reference to Cardoso. And right away, she tweeted about it in support of her player,
Hmm.
asking to apologize, like just that kind of stuff. Like,
Okay.
she's in front of it. She's advocating not just for South Carolina and her players, but honestly for women's basketball as a whole, which is pretty cool.
Okay. So you did earlier mention, along with Dawn Staley, Kim Mulkey, Tara Vanderveer. Have you had the opportunity to compete against them or meet them as well?
No, just Don. And honestly, this year was the first year played against Coach Staley.
Okay.
We Clemson, South Carolina have that year-to-year rivalry back and forth,
Right.
obviously
Right.
being in the state, and so being able to do that. But outside of that, it's just on the recruiting scene, that type of deal. I don't think I've ever really had a conversation with Mulkey or Tara.
Okay.
Just know and follow the success. But Coach Staley, I've touch bases with occasionally and via text or in person. But
Hmm.
she's always been great and cordial.
Okay. So the last one I'm going to mention, obviously you being in the ACC, will be Coach Ivy up at Notre Dame.
Mhm.
What's she like? Obviously an outstanding coach, and she has a son in the NBA. What's she like as a person?
Yeah, and again, she's another one I don't know personally.
Okay.
When I was early in my first stint in the ACC, when I was at Miami,
Hmm.
she was an assistant, and never had a ton of interaction with her.
Okay.
Obviously, see her on the road, that kind of stuff. Again,
Hmm.
cordial, but no true relationship. I know she's a competitor. I mean, you see
Yeah.
that from the beginning, and
Right.
and I think she's done a really really good job of taking over that program, and it has not
Hmm.
dipped. That's the thing that's
Yeah.
impressive. When you have change like that, sometimes you see some dippage in that, and in that transition. But she has
Hmm.
kept it at a high level. She recruits at an elite level.
Hmm.
Notre Dame's Notre Dame in terms of this, it's cachet and players wanting to go play there and that kind of stuff. But I think she's done a great job in her time there. So I don't know her personally, but from afar, I can see how impressive she is, and
Hmm.
how good of a job she's done as the head coach of that program.
Yeah, to your point, you're saying that Notre Dame didn't have any slippage when she took over. I mean, she took over for a legend in Coach McGraw, so you would have expected maybe there's be a little downturn and then she'll build it back up. But that speaks to, her acumen as a coach and her ability to, as you said, recruit and connect with her players in order to continue to have that level of success. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's awesome.
yeah, and I think too, on that same note, I mean, she was there through all that success on the
Hmm.
sidelines
That's
as an
true too.
assistant, help. She was a big part of that. So
Hmm.
knowing how to, knowing what to, in reference to getting things that need to get done to kind of
Hmm.
sustain that, she had the blueprint, and it's a
That's
matter
right.
of putting her personal touch on that blueprint, but continuing to do what they did
Mhm.
over that time she was there also as an assistant.
Nice. And before we get to discussing some of the individual players, a couple players I really want to get to. But before we get to that, we've spent a lot of time here talking about um, the popularity, the current level of popularity of the college women's game, the collegiate women's game. And I think obviously that's awesome for those young ladies that put in all that work. And real talk, they out there hooping, right? So
Mhm.
it's not even like to say they can't play. They out there balling. So my question is, what do you think is the disparity when they get to the next level? The WNBA, if we're being honest, it's got a lot of outstanding players, but we got to call a spade a spade. If not for the NBA, the WNBA would have folded a long time ago. And that just is what it is. And we get all this stuff about, oh, men should support the WNBA more, blah, blah, blah. And realistically, there are more women than men in the United States. And if more women would support that league would be doing a lot better. This is not an indictment of women, but I mean, the facts are the facts. But as we saw, like over All-Star Weekend, no, when we were coming up, the biggest thing was the dunk contest. If you ask me, the biggest thing this past All-Star Weekend was a 3-point shootout between Steph Curry and Sabrina Ionescu. And I'm looking and I'm like, boy, she got a gun. Like she's out there letting that thing go, you know? And so what do you think is the differentiator between college women's ball and the WNBA? Why the WNBA just cannot seem to get over the hump and really begin to have that level of popularity and success? What do you think?
It's interesting. It's an interesting question because I look back and you look at when it's kind of like we talk about popularity being attached to individual players.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at the NBA, ABA, whatever, it existed a long time before it became popular.
Mm-hmm.
They were hooping a long time
That's right.
before it was televised, before it became popular, before it became mainstream. And so, when you look at that history of it, obviously we're in a microwave society right now where we feel like, you put 2 minutes on the clock and you expect everything to be as it should be. But
Mm-hmm.
there's always a process. And I think we're going through that process right now of getting to that level where people understand, respect, and understand and respect the game and have interest in it. And I think you're continuing to see that grow. And I mean, to be honest and frank, the Caitlin Clark factor is going to have a huge impact. I think not just on college basketball, but in the W when she gets there.
We'll
People are
see.
going to be curious. Will her game translate? People are going to
Mm-hmm.
want to see her, continue to see her play. And I think I'm not going to put it in the same category because I think this was revolutionary for basketball in general. But when you talk about the Magic Bird rivalry, like that's when the NBA kind of
Uh,
started rolling. We haven't
mm-hmm.
had that yet. And so I think as we continue to gravitate to certain players and individuals, and those individuals get to a level where they're having that type of impact, I think the game will continue to grow. And you've seen it grow leaps and bounds over the last handful of years. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that'll continue to grow. So it's just a matter of time, honestly. I think it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when
Okay.
and how that's going to come about. But I mean, and if you go just based off of the NBA model and how the NBA became the NBA, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know the actual timeline and dates, but I do know, in the finals were on tape delay.
Mm-hmm.
There was, that until you had that Bird Magic rivalry, and it just kind of brought everybody into the sport.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're starting to see that come on the college side, and now I think that's going to transition into the NBA, to the WNBA, and hopefully that'll lead to more viewership, more sponsorship, more money flowing into bigger TV contracts, all that stuff that lends to success at that level.
Got you. Got you. Okay. So you brought her up. Let's get right to it. Caitlin Clark.
Yeah.
And she is one of the main reasons I wanted to have this discussion with you today,
Okay.
Coach. I'm not going to lie to you and sit here and tell you that I am the biggest women's college basketball fan, but watching that young woman play, she's something. She is something. I mean, she's quick. She can handle it. She can pass it. We know she's got logo range. What impresses me, I think, the most when we talk about Caitlin Clark is, and I didn't know this till like I was going back doing some more research for this show, watching her play some more, checking out the numbers and all that. She's averaging almost 9 assists a game, Coach. Like with all the scoring is bonkers, and that, of course, we all know that's what gets everybody excited. But she's getting 9 assists a game, Coach. I mean, tell me what's special about Caitlin Clark. Obviously, we know the shooting, but as a coach, you are planning defenses and okay, we got to play against this person, man. We got to try to figure out how to control this. Talk to me about Caitlin Clark and why she's so special.
She's a complete player. Offensively, she can score on all levels. But the thing you mentioned is her playmaking ability. It's not just about her ability to score, it's about her ability to make her team better and uplift her players. And she does it so many different ways, whether it's the space she creates
Mm-hmm.
because of her ability to shoot, and now it makes life easier for others, whether it's the attention she gets with double teams and that kind of stuff, which makes her teammates better because of it, or is it just because her creating and making plays? She's special. She's competitive. She's fiery.
Yes.
She wants to win.
Mm-hmm.
I think she's special, man, on so many different levels. She's fun
Mm-hmm.
to watch.
Yeah.
And you think about it again, you always it's hard not to compare. But when you think about why does everybody gravitate to Steph Curry?
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
his ability to shoot the ball, his ability
Mm-hmm.
to score the way he scores, his ability to make plays. And you know, she's, to me, she's in the same light. Like, she can impact the game, especially on the offensive side of ball, in so many different ways.
Hmm.
You have to account for her as soon as she crosses half court. It
Hmm.
just opens up the floor. And nowadays, the game's all about spacing,
Yeah.
and she creates that naturally. And she makes life for the others easier because they have so much space to play when they're around her. So she's fun to watch, man. And I
Yeah,
don't, if you're a
absolutely.
basketball fan, it doesn't matter if you're a middle school fan, a
Hmm.
college fan, a pro fan, men,
Hmm.
women, European, whatever. She's fun to watch, and that's so, in being in Iowa, and not at one of your kind of quote unquote big name
Yeah, your blue
marquee.
bloods.
Not taking
Hmm.
anything away from Iowa, but they've had a tremendous amount of success over a period of time,
That's
and
right.
she's been able to elevate them to a level where they haven't been before consistently.
Hmm.
And for me, that's the other thing too, because it's not about just numbers. She's winning.
Yeah,
Like, she's
that's
winning,
right.
and that's the thing too. You talk about 3 back-to-back-to-back Big Ten conference championships. You're talking about getting to, the Final Four and playing in the national, like that stuff that
Hmm.
comes along with the numbers. But she's
That's right.
also a winner, and she elevates her team to get to that level. And that's, to me, that's what makes her special and separates her.
That's right. And like I said, like you mentioned, the playmaking, I was impressed by that. And then, just again, in prepping for this show, watching some of her stuff, and she'll get down in the crouch and defend. Like, how often do you see elite offensive players that really want to defend? I think in the clip I just showed there was one, she came with a vicious help side block. Like, I was
Mhm.
like, whoa, she said, and you could see, like, she had that look like, I want to bring it to you, and a lot of times elite offensive players don't necessarily have that look on the other side of the ball. So yeah, absolutely love watching her, love what she brings to the game. And I think it's incredible. So then we also talked about Angel Reese. And
Mhm.
as you mentioned, Angel Reese, it's possible that she and Caitlin Clark, maybe they could be that kind of rivalry, the magic bird type thing
Mhm.
that ignites the WNBA to the next level in terms of their growth and their popularity, because
Mhm.
she is a dog herself. Now, she's not going to come across and pull it from the logo like Caitlin Clark will, but she's going to get busy. She's going to hit the glass. She's going to defend. She's going to rebound. She's going to score inside. She is a baller, but I think that's probably the B more in her. But
Yeah.
yeah, she gets out there. She hoops. So I mean, tell me about Angel Reese, and if you had to scout against her and prepare a game plan, what you think about that?
She's tough, man. I think the other
Hmm.
side of it with her is she has she's extended her range a little bit this year.
Okay.
Something she's impressive, man. Her ability to affect the game. The one thing that always translates, like as coaches and evaluators, when we recruit, we go out and we look for players, we look for things, and the big thing you want to know is how is this skill going to translate to this level? Like, that's the thing with Caitlin Clark, going back, like her skill and how she scores will translate to the next level.
Hmm.
Like the skill that Angel has that will always translate is her rebounding. Like, the ball gravitates to her. She always finds a way to get it in her hands and make plays around the rim. And I've always been a proponent of, if you want to win, you got to find a way to get the ball. Like, because obviously you want to score it, you got to get it to score it. And
Hmm.
she's one of those kids that just finds a way to get the ball. Ball gravitates to her, and it makes her really, really special. And then her ability to face up and shoot it, get to the rim, and just the physicality and toughness and competitiveness that she plays with,
Hmm.
like, that's what separates her. And so, yes, you're right. That's a rivalry that's developed in the college rank. I was just looking just now to see when and if they could match up in the
Right.
NCAA tournament
Right.
based on bracketology and how it's played out. And I
Hmm.
want to say, if I'm looking at this right, it would be a Final Four matchup,
Of course.
if they were to meet, based
Yeah.
on how the brackets are aligned right now.
Hmm. Yeah. I
And
haven't taken a
so,
look
I mean,
yet. I was kind of
imagine
waiting
that
for.
game in the Final Four with an
Yeah.
opportunity to go play in the national
That's right.
championship.
Yeah.
That would be pretty cool. So,
Yeah.
and get a lot of headlines and that type deal. So, it's that's what we need. That's what we need.
Hmm.
It was
Hmm.
great. I know it was somewhat controversial last tournament with all the stuff that was going on, but guess what?
Hmm.
They're talking about women's basketball.
That's right.
They're talking
That's
about
very
women's
true.
basketball. Hopefully more positive than negative. And
Yeah.
in that scenario, I think it was a lot more positive, but they're talking about the game. They're talking about our players. They're bringing attention to our players. You know, you got people that have never watched a game before hearing about it and being like, you know what, LSU's playing. I want to see who this Angel Reese, person is. I've never watched a game in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's their opportunity to grab hold of that person and bring them into our sport. And I think
Mm-hmm.
we're getting more and more opportunities to do that.
That's right. So, all right, the third player that really grabs my attention, and I'm pretty sure you know where I'm going with this, is the freshman from out west.
Oh, yeah.
Man, Juju Watkins is something else. So,
Yeah.
same question for you. What makes Juju special, and how would you draw up a game plan against her?
She's a bucket, man. Like she's a bucket. She can score on all levels. She's got unbelievable size and strength.
That's right. 6'2",
I mean, you saw that bully right there.
Yep.
Like, just get off
Yep.
me.
Right.
Like, I mean, she's competitive. She's the full package. And the cool thing about her is she's still learning the game. Like,
right.
She's still figuring out how do I use what I do to make everybody else better. And it's the same thing as Caitlin Clark. Like she scores 51 against Stanford.
51 of 67. That was crazy.
Ridiculous. In a close game. Okay.
Yes. They needed every bucket.
And then
That's
they
right.
play Stanford in the championship game of the Pac-12 championship.
Mm-hmm.
And what is obviously Stanford adjusts, and they just put bodies in front of her.
Yeah.
They build a wall, they put bodies in front of her. Well, guess what? That opens up for everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And who's played a game in the tournament is another kid who gets it because of the advantages she created just from being on the floor.
That's gravity.
So that's the thing. Like, she's unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
And exciting to watch, and she's just tipping the iceberg of how good she's going to be.
Right,
like
right.
It's we're losing one with Caitlin Clark, and we're getting another one with Juju, and that's exciting because. And guess what? There's going to be another one behind it. And then you talk about freshmen, you can't forget about Delgado, the kid that plays is at Notre Dame. When you look at the top scorers in the country, 2 of them are freshmen.
That's crazy.
2 of them are freshmen.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's exciting for the future. And as we continue to build on our rivalries and how that's going to affect and impact the notoriety of the game. But
coincidence, that's Notre Dame and USC. So you will see those 2 playing against each other.
That's correct. So, I mean, it's cool from that standpoint. And then you also, you also have the, Kitley, who obviously got hurt in the conference tournament, but you're talking about bigs that can score. She's another one. We're loaded. Deja Fair. Have you seen Deja Fair from Syracuse play?
No, I haven't.
Oh my God, that kid's an absolute bucket, man. She's 5'7", can put on the floor, can score so many different ways. I think she scored like 3,000 points or something ridiculous. So it's kids. There's a lot of good talent in women's basketball, and the conference tournament hopefully will allow us to showcase those talents. I think ESPN and some of the TV station, the TV networks have an opportunity to really, really put a spotlight on some of these individual players that people can gravitate to and have curiosity about, which is also going to lead to more viewership and lead to those rivalries and those things. So it's exciting time for sure.
Yeah, I know that with LSU, they got that backcourt is dangerous with Van Lith and Johnson, Flau'jae Johnson. That's a dangerous backcourt right there.
It is.
They can shoot it, they can defend you, they can pass it. Man, that's tough.
And I'll say this: we talk about the tournament and stuff and what we have to look forward to. South Carolina obviously has dominated this season. They're undefeated going into the tournament, but it's not like they've skated through. Like I remember when you had some undefeated teams and they're beating everybody by 20, beating everybody by 30. The thing that's interesting is they've had some tough games. They got to beat Tennessee at the buzzer. The LSU game comes down to the wire.
Right.
So it's not like they're, and I think that's good for South Carolina because they're tested.
You gotta be tested.
They're tested. They've had to, and they're a relatively young team too. That's in the fire, learning how to win, learning how to handle adversity, learning what it's going to take for them to pull those games out. But it also lends to opening up the floor a little bit in terms of the opportunity for someone to maybe upset, someone to, go on a Cinderella run, and how we get come March. Like that's what makes it special. You never know. And I think in women's basketball, it's always been a known. And I think the doors opened up a little bit for someone to squeak in there and hopefully make some noise.
There it is. So, Coach, all right. So we've talked about some of the big name programs, the big name players. Tell us about, give us two or three of the players that are lesser known that you mentioned that are, or maybe that you haven't mentioned that are super talented ones to watch, and maybe a couple of programs that maybe could make that Cinderella run come tournament time.
Yeah, I mentioned one. We talk about Deasia Fair. I think that kid's special, and how she scores. She actually was at Buffalo and went to Buffalo, and then when Felicia left and went to Syracuse, she left and went there and has scored a tremendous amount of points in this past season in her career there. So that's one for sure. And if you get an opportunity to watch her play, that's you get an opportunity to watch a really, really special player get after it. We talk about other names. I'm a big Cam. She's not a sleeper. She's going to be one of the high draft pick, but I love this kid in Cameron Brink. Her ability to score the basketball from the post, her ability to affect the game on both ends of the floor, blocking shots. She's special from that spot, and
Who's she playing for, Coach?
She's with Stanford.
Okay. Okay.
And she'll be a high draft pick, but
should have known.
She's not someone that's an unknown.
Okay.
But someone that I'm a big fan of because of her toughness, her ability to affect the game on both ends of the floor, and be so impactful for them as a program. She's going to lead the way for them. I mentioned Kitley, who won't play. Well, I shouldn't say that because I'm not 100% sure what her injury was, but another big that dominates the game and Virginia Tech plays through. A small guard, another ACC player though, is Georgia Amore. She's the point guard for Virginia Tech. She's the one that went on a huge run with them last year when they went to the Final Four. And the thing that's going to be interesting about her is if Kitley doesn't play, she's going to have to carry him. And she's definitely capable with her ability to shoot the basketball from the point guard spot and score and distribute. So she's another one that's going to be an interesting one there. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else that comes off of mine. We talked about Juju. We got right now bracketology. You got Ohio State being a number 2 seed, UCLA being a number 2 seed, and just kind of from a projection standpoint, Texas and LSU being number 2 seeds. They all have players that can carry them, and that's the fun part about it. That this time of year is, when you have an elite player that has an opportunity to kind of separate you from some of the other ones, a kid that can go get you a bucket, kid that can make a play for you down the stretch in a close game. They can be separators. So it's going to be an exciting time, man. And I'm looking forward to it getting started here pretty soon. We got a couple more conference tournaments that'll end up this weekend. We'll get to selection Monday, and then we'll get rolling.
Okay. So, Coach, so obviously you've been at this at the collegiate level for a long time. And the more I'm into this sports thing, so me, I'm kind of a purist. Like, I love the sport for the sport, but at the end of the day, money, we know that money talks. And so my question is this: do you believe, and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, do you believe that the selection committee in some ways sets up the brackets to try and hopefully flesh out the best matchups down the road? And the reason I say that would be, obviously, we would all who love basketball love to see a Caitlin Clark, Juju Watkins matchup somewhere in the tournament. Now, I haven't taken a look at the bracketology yet. I'll wait till Sunday, Selection Sunday, to see where it all kind of falls out. But is that your thought? Do you think they just play it down the line? Because again, sports is a TV product more than anything now. We're seeing it in college football. We're seeing it in men's basketball. I think there's talk of a possible further expansion of the tournament. I'm like, come on. But yeah, it's all about the money. So yeah. What do you think about that?
I think, well, obviously, to begin with, they have written parameters that they try to abide by and stay with as to how they do matchups. Now, within those parameters, if there's opportunity to create matchups that's going to promote the game, yes, generate money, generate revenue, I think, yes, that plays into it. That's one of the, I think that's one of the reasons why we have the home sites for this top 16 teams to start, is because they're trying to generate revenue. They're trying to generate exposure for the sport and create arenas that are fun to play in, or exciting to play in. And so with that being said, yeah, I think it definitely plays a part within the parameters of, what they want to try to accomplish, whether it's conference opponents not playing each other to later in the tournament,
Mm.
to regional stuff in terms of people playing, home games and that kind of stuff, or playing at home sites earlier in the tournament. Yes, we take you within those parameters. If there's an opportunity to put a matchup, whether it's a team matchup, a rivalry, or a personal matchup
Mm-hmm.
together, I think they definitely will take that into consideration, no doubt. And it could honestly even be coach rivalry matchups also.
Mm.
Like I think
Didn't think
all
about
that
that
plays
side yet.
into it. I mean, it is TV, it is entertainment,
Mm-hmm.
and it is a revenue building sport. So I mean,
Mm-hmm.
so I think all that plays into it for sure.
All right. Well, there you have it, man. Coach, I appreciate all that, man. That's always love talking to you and getting your feedback on this stuff. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for taking the time to join me here today.
No, man, I appreciate you having me on. I'm excited about what you do and how you, lift the sport up, all the sports, honestly. You talk about a little bit of everything on here. So
I
it's
try to.
exciting to see, exciting to hear, and get different viewpoints and whatnot. So I appreciate you having me on, and I look forward to doing it again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Coach. And listen up, everybody who's watching. If you're here, make sure, if you haven't already, please click that like, that subscribe, that notification bell. Make sure you follow the show. Make sure you're aware whenever we drop new content on the channel. You want the audio only, you know what to do. Go get it on your audio podcast platform. And make sure you tune in Saturday nights at 7 p.m. for the live show. Look forward to seeing you in the chat. Looking forward to hearing you call in. So, yeah, that's it. Coach, thanks again. And I'm out. Peace.